We're going to take another moment to allow folks to trickle in. You can read more about tonight's author event in our chat. We have a link there. And also don't forget to buy that book. Congratulations, pub date. All right, let's get started. Good evening and welcome to tonight's live online author event with Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Kay from Greenlight Bookstore and we're thrilled to host tonight's event with editor Laura Silverman, presenting her new anthology, Game On, 15 stories of wins, losses, and everything in between, featuring contributors who are here tonight, Gloria Chao, Kathleen Glasgow, and Francesca Zappia. Before we start, I just want to say a huge thanks to Laura, Gloria, Kathleen, Francesca, and the team at Viking Books for Young Readers for making this happen, and to all of you for showing up. Although we're not able to host events in our store spaces, our community of authors and readers is still here. We're grateful for your support and for the chance to make space for conversation and connection. Now, just a couple of housekeeping things. In our Zoom webinar tonight, you can see and hear the speakers, but they can't see or hear you. They can see that you're here though, and there are a couple of different ways you can interact with the authors and with each other throughout tonight's event, which we highly encourage. The first is the chat, which you can find by clicking on the icon that looks like one speech balloon. You're welcome to post your comments and thoughts in the chat. It's a great way to show your appreciation for the authors and interact with fellow attendees. If you have a specific question you'd like to have answered by any of the authors, please post that question in the Q&A module. You can find it by clicking on the icon that looks like two speech balloons. We'll be pulling questions only from the Q&A to be answered in the later part of the program. And importantly, tonight's featured book, Game On, is available for sale from Greenlight Bookstore. You can shop in person from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. at both our Fulton Street and Flatbush Ave stores. Yes, modeled that book. Where you can purchase Game On and many other books on site. You can also order online, oh my goodness, so cute, at greenlightbookstore.com for a quick pickup at the store or for shipping anywhere in the US. The buy link is in the chat. As thanks for attending tonight's virtual event, we are offering 10% off the featured book. Enter coupon code GreenlightEvents10 into the coupon discount section at checkout online for 10% off. If you care about supporting the careers of authors and the ongoing existence of independent bookstores, buying tonight's featured book is a great way to show your support. And now to introduce our panelists tonight. Laura Silverman is the editor of and contributor to Game On, as well as the author of Girl Out of Water, You Asked for Perfect, and Recommended for You. She is also the editor and contributor of It's a Whole Spiel and Up All Night. Laura has also been a freelance editor for 7 years. Gloria Chao is the critically acclaimed author of American Panda, Our Wayward Fate, and Rent a Boyfriend. After a brief detour as a dentist, she is now grateful to spend her days in fictional characters' heads instead of real life people's mouths. Gloria is an avid curler, loves puzzles like the ones from Mystery Hunt, and enjoys board games like Parks, Takenoko, and Forbidden Island. Did I say that right, Gloria?
Yeah.
Kathleen Glasgow is the New York Times bestselling author of Girl in Pieces, How to Make Friends with the Dark, and You'd Be Home Now. Kathleen's favorite game is hide and seek because you never know who or what you might find when you start looking. Francesca Zappia lives in Indiana and graduated from the University of Indianapolis with a degree in computer science and mathematics. She was chosen as the 2017 Emerging Author at the Indiana Authors Awards, and her second novel, Eliza and Her Monsters, was chosen as a Kirkus Review's Best Teen Book of 2017. Francesca loves sports, video games, and board games, but her favorite game of all is probably Minesweeper. Yes, that one on the computer with the numbers. What a classic. Mine's Tetris, so. Our featured book tonight, Game On, is a charming and inclusive YA anthology all about games, from athletic sports to board games to virtual reality. From the slightly fantastical to the utterly real, light and sweet romance to tales tinged with horror and thrills, Game On is an anthology that spans genre and style. Laura, Gloria, Kathleen, and Francesca will start us off with readings from the book. Then they'll be talking with each other and then with all of you. Please take it away, authors.
Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. So we're now all going to read a short excerpt from our stories. And the beautiful thing about an anthology is that all of these stories are so different and have something unique to offer the audience. I think we'll just go in order. I'll start reading first, and then we'll go to Gloria, Kathleen, and Francesca. So I'm going to read a short excerpt from my story, and it's titled, Do You See It Now? And it is based off of a real life experience I had at a board game shop where I had this very sexist interaction. It was very subtle, but it really hit me and inspired me to write a story, because I know a lot of girls experience the same thing. They go into a board game shop or a comic book store and they're just treated as invisible or less than because they're a girl and not a boy in the store. In real life, my boyfriend was with me and he handled it very well and agreed that it was a very sexist situation. But I was like, what would happen if the girl's boyfriend didn't really agree with her, and how would that affect their relationship? So I'm going to read a short story, a short excerpt from that now. Can I help you guys? Someone asks. We turn to find another employee behind us. He's tall and lanky, wearing a flannel shirt and square rim glasses. Sure, I reply. We're hosting a game night at my house. I have a ton of choices, but I'd love to find another party game. Tired of apples to apples, huh? He asks, his eyebrow arching. The comment bristles me. Not that there's anything wrong with apples to apples. It's a perfectly fine game, but well, it is kind of bottom tier, basic. Here, he says, turning around and walking us over to another section. These are some new releases, super fun and under the radar. He glances back at Theo. What kind of stuff do you like? Strategy, drafting, social deduction? Theo runs a hand through his curls. I wait for him to turn to me and consult, but he doesn't. Strategy, definitely. Awesome, the guy says, clearly only talking to Theo, like I've disappeared from the face of the planet. You should check out these two. This one has great replay value, and this one is great for groups of 4 or more. How many at the party tonight? 6, I think. Theo finally looks over at me for confirmation of this number, right? I give a tight nod. Frustration claws at me. The employee is talking to Theo like I don't exist, even though I'm the one hosting the party tonight and the one better versed in games. Theo loves playing more than most people, but he's not quite the board game fanatic I am, with 30 games stacked high in my closet. My friend Kelsey told me this happens to her all the time when she goes to the comic book store with her dad. The employees only talk to her dad and never give her the time of day, like she, a girl, couldn't possibly have an interest in comics. Awesome. The employee pulls out the box carefully. I definitely go with this one then. You won't regret it. Great, thanks, man, Theo says, taking the game with a smile while I stand by like I'm invisible. Just let me know if you need anything else. My name is Jack. You can find me over at the card counter. Jack waves goodbye and leaves us alone. Theo hands me the box. It's a game I already own. What? Theo asks, brow creased with concern. I must be making quite the face. I'll tell you in the car, I say, putting the box back on the shelf. A few minutes later, we're driving back toward my house. Our friends will be arriving in a couple of hours. Seven Wonders sits on my lap. I picked it out in a rush, eager to leave, embarrassed after that incident to hand the store my hard-earned pet sitting money, but even more embarrassed to leave with nothing. The light turns green, and Theo presses lightly on the gas. I've always liked that he's a good driver, calm, steady, both hands on the wheel. He's never once pulled out his phone while driving, not even to skip a song or see who texted him. So what's up, he asked me. Honestly, I thought it was kind of obvious what happened back there. But I guess Theo is a boy. He's not used to seeing that stuff like girls are. That guy in the shop was only talking to you, I tell him. Like I wasn't even there. It was kind of sexist. Oh, Theo says. I didn't notice. Sorry. I go to automatically accept his apology, but my brain snags on a thought. Wait, I pause. You're sorry you didn't notice, or you're sorry that it happened? Theo laughs. Why does this feel like a trap? Irritation pricks my skin. A trap? Seriously? It's not a trap, I tell him. I just want to talk about this with you. Right, no worries. Uncomfortable silence beats through the car. Theo clicks on his signal before turning left. We'll be at my house soon. I should leave it alone, but my anxiety is building. His apology rings hollow in my ears, and he's acting so blasé about the whole thing. I want him to care about this more. There's a hard lump in my throat when I speak. What was the answer then? You're sorry it happened, right? You agree the guy was being sexist? Theo is quiet a beat too long. Totally, Alexis. If you think he's sexist, then I'm sure you're right. I bite the inside of my cheek. Somehow that answer doesn't really feel like a yes. So that is my excerpt from My Game On Story. Do you see it now? And thank you. And things will grow more chaotic and emotional as the night goes on and all of their friends arrive for the board game night. So pick up the story to see what happens with their relationship. And I would now love to move on to Gloria's story.
I have to say, Laura, that your story was so powerful when I read it and when you said it happened to you. It both surprised me and didn't surprise me, in all the expected ways, but I thought it was really well done. I also loved all the games you mentioned because as a board game nerd, I was like, oh yeah, like that's a favorite. And so that happened a lot, reading this anthology is, loving all kinds of games. So I hope readers have the same experience, that I feel like we covered a broad range. So hopefully you'll find at least, one story where it feels like, oh, this is, something I love too.
Thank you.
My short story is called Mystery Hunt, and I based it loosely inspired by, I went to MIT as an undergrad and they had an annual mystery hunt. So I made a version of it that is linguistics themed. And so I created all the puzzles and tried to use a lot of different languages. And I wrote it in a way that the readers can actually solve a lot of them along with the characters, because I planted all the little clues that you need along the way. So I'm just going to read a little bit from the beginning. I'm about to embark on the famous linguistics department annual mystery hunt, the one I've been looking forward to since I researched colleges in high school and put Cornmouth University at the top of my dream list, despite my high school friends asking me why I wanted to go to a school with such a weird name in the middle of nowhere and with a nerdy reputation. I need to win, for my dad and me. Puzzles and games have always been our thing, our way to bond and communicate, and it's a big reason why I'm pursuing a career in linguistics. He and I have been talking about the hunt for years, and he's already texted twice today. My palms are sweating, not just because I've been waiting for this forever, but also because of who I'm teaming up with today. A moment later, my partner arrives and my heart leaps into my throat. No idea why. He's only tall, dark, and handsome, his floppy dark hair always looking messy, but like he spent time making it just so. Today is no exception. Hey, Speedy, he greets me, same as he always does. And even though I've heard that nickname many times in the 2 months I've known him, it still sends a flutter through me. His giant one-dimpled smile lights up his face, causing the corners of his eyes to crinkle. Hey, Pierce, I respond, as usual. No cute nickname because I'm shy. Does it count that I call him Piercing Baby Blues in my head? Are you ready? Do we need to rub old Carl for good luck? He asks as he rests an elbow on the base of the bronze statue dedicated to the university's founders, Cornelius and Ern Cornmouth, or Carl for short. The going rumor is that the brothers were so unattractive, they requested a statue of their hands mid-handshake instead of one of the usual obnoxious full-body statues found on other campuses. The structure consists of two giant hands overlapping and the thumb sticking up in the air to form a diamond-shaped window with the index fingers. Pierce reaches a hand toward Cornelius's pinky, aka the easiest to reach spot, which is now gold from being rubbed so many times before tests, dates, or sports games. Don't! I grab his hand, then flush at the contact. My palm immediately floods with sweat, and I let go as if his hand burned me. I quickly try to explain. I heard the frat guys like to pee on it since they know people rub it for luck. Pierce cringes, exactly why I have zero interest in the Greek system. Then he smiles. Well, just that Greek system. I'm very interested in alpha, beta, gamma. I'm melting on the inside, but can't seem to put into words how much I love his joke. Apparently, I'm extra quiet when it's just the two of us, which is a first today. We usually saw each other in study groups. Shall we? He sticks his elbow out for me to loop my hand in, and I shyly press fingers to the inside of his bicep, his very muscular bicep, firmer than I would have guessed based on his lean frame. But then as we start moving, his arm droops a little, my fingers drop, and we walk to the library with our hands shoved into our pockets. The mystery hunt kickoff is taking place in one of the library's seminar rooms. When we arrive, it's already packed and buzzing with excitement. The atmosphere is the epitome of one of my favorite Mandarin phrases, "Bruh now," which I don't think has a worthy translation, not without several words. I consider sharing that with Pierce, but I refrain, worried it would sound nerdy, even though, by all indications, he would love it. Like me, he's planning on majoring in linguistics. We met during orientation 2 months ago. In our first conversation, I told him that I was named Faye, a westernized spelling of my Chinese name, Faye, and he joked that I was destined to study linguistics since my name is a combination of two languages of sorts. My feelings for him pretty much started then and only grew as he talked about how words first came to life for him during Latin class in high school. His love of etymology, of how words have a unique history and can bend and change over time. Meeting him was like the phrase "two peas in a pod" coming to life for me. I'd never felt that with any other person before, and especially not someone who shared my passion for language. Unfortunately, for someone who wants to study communication, I'm terrible at it. Not always, but with my crushes, with Pierce. Truth be told, I haven't had many crushes, just superficial ones that don't seem to count now that I've met Pierce. I wasn't always tongue-tied in his presence, but once he started calling me Speedy, after he saw how fast I solved our first exercise in Intro to Phonetics and Phonology, all my words seemed to disappear. So the rest of the story talks about how Faye navigates her crush for him and slowly figures out, how to find her voice, and how the mystery hunt actually helps her, do something about this crush finally.
I love Gloria's story so much. And I mentioned this online, but recently publishing has been obsessed with this new word game called Wordle. And if you're a fan of that game, you would definitely be a fan of Gloria's story. It's just like, it's so much fun. And it's like, I love how interactive it is. And you can try to like puzzle solve along with the characters.
Thank you. That means a lot as a Wordle fan.
And now we're going to move on to not a rom-com, but a very thrilling story by Kathleen.
Okay, this story is called Plum Girls, and I just want to say thank you to Laura for not saying, "What the hell is that story that you just gave me?" and for letting me just sort of exercise some different muscles. And this is a story about a group of girls who are friends when they're younger, and a terrible accident, or is it, occurs to one of their friends, and it's about the lasting repercussions of trauma, really. And it turns into kind of a revenge story in the end, sort of, and then sort of not. When you sit in a movie theater, do you ever wonder, has someone died here in this very seat? Do you look at your teacher patiently explaining linear equations in front of the whiteboard and think, has Mr. Filson ever killed someone? Wrapped those fingers, perhaps still stained with marker, around a trembling neck and squeezed until the thrashing stopped? Do you let yourself drift into darkness, or do you hold it at bay? What I'm saying is, death is all around you, all the time, whether you choose to see it or not. The sidewalk you travel from bus stop to home may be invisibly littered with people whose stuttering hearts simply gave out, right there, near that empty soda can, where your sneaker is about to land. Someone died there. Do you travel through their death? Does it touch you? Does some remnant of them still exist in that space where their last breath eked out into the atmosphere? For instance, when I'm particularly quiet, I can still feel the warmth of Hannah's hand in mine just before she was pushed from the bridge's railing, her head splitting on the rocks beneath the river's surface as neatly as an egg cracked against a bowl. I'm asking you to believe that many years ago, two young men pulled up to an old farmhouse on the edge of town, just as a family was settling down to a dinner of mashed potatoes, meatloaf, peas, and milk, and rang the doorbell, asking to use the phone, for they were lost. Those were the days that a phone lived on the wall of your house and not in your pocket. Days when doors were answered and strangers in need were allowed inside. Those were different times. The strangers were supposed to wipe their feet, say hello, enter, use the phone, and leave, not slide machetes from their rumpled coats. There was no way you could know the mashed potatoes you were looking forward to would soon be dampened with your blood. So I wrote, it's a little bit of a murder story, a little bit of a horror story, a lot of a story about memory and reconstruction of memory and girls' relationships with one another, particularly when they start very young. And partly the story was inspired because I was rereading In Cold Blood, the Truman Capote nonfiction book about a very real murder that happened to the Clutter family. And I was reading that when Liz and I were co-writing a mystery together. So little things like seeped in, and I just really decided to explore the voice of a person who had been wronged, but didn't know that she had been wronged for a very long time.
The story is so good, and I love so Kathleen also wrote a story for my anthology Up All Night, which came out last summer. And not only are both of those stories so creepy, but your relationships between young girls, like the way you depict them is so very like interesting and nuanced and unique and dynamic, and it's so good. I'm so excited for people to read it.
It was, I really like writing for you, Laura, because you let me like do different things than I normally do.
My friends and I discuss that a lot, how an anthology, writing a short story, it's an opportunity to like really push the envelope and do something a little different, because you don't have that scary feeling of I have to write a whole novel of this. You can just write a sampler.
And I love that in this anthology, like there's truly a story in here for everyone, like absolutely.
For sure. So we're now, speaking of a story for everyone, we're now going to move on to Francesca's story. And Francesca's story, it's I don't know if we would call it fantasy as the genre, but it's definitely otherworldly. It's called Game of the Gods, and it's so much fun. I will let Francesca describe it because she will be able to better than I can, but the story was really magical and really exciting to read, and I felt like I was like right there with the characters.
So first of all, I do love all the different kinds of stories that we have in this book. And like Laura, when I read yours, I immediately texted my boyfriend after that. And I was like, I'm so glad you are not like this. Gloria, when I read yours, I was like, I love linguistics. I'm so hyped for this right now. It's a linguistics rom-com, give it to me. And Kathleen, I was like, I need this to be a movie right now. This is metal, this is hardcore, put it into my eyeballs. So my story is called Game of the Gods, like Laura said. And it is about it's basically like a cheer squad, not cheerleaders, but a squad for a football team whose job it is to curry favor with the gods. Like Greek gods is what they do in the story, but it could be any god. And they don't see them, but it is an actual tangible thing that happens, and it gives extra abilities to their players and things like that. And the reason I did this instead of the main character actually playing the sport is because I've noticed a lot in recent years how much I enjoy being a fan of things, and how being a fan of something and the way you choose to celebrate that game can also be a game in itself and can be just as exciting as playing the sport or the video game or whatever. So I do love writing fantasy, which is why this has more of a fantasy bent to it. And so this is going to start with a little bit of just an explanation of the favor squads and what's going on. Favor squads, like us, aren't just the cheerleaders on the field. They're a whole network of fans whose job it is to rile the crowd in a display for their god. Running a favor squad is a full-on career in most college and professional sports leagues, but it's more like a club at the high school level, completely student-run. The high school sports board says it encourages a more level playing field between schools, but Elmwood would never have the money or prestige to curry favor with a god like Zeus. Greek deities are popular because they pay good attention to any kind of competition, but others will reward favor too. Lawrence has the money to put up stadiums to Zeus. Elmwood only has Fury's money, the Greek Furies, the sisters Alecto, Megara, and Tisiphone. But if you ask me, the Furies like us better for our fighting spirit. In myth, they're underworld deities older than most other gods, and they bring eternal wrath and punishment. Pretty hardcore, yet they aren't well known, so they tend to end up with smaller teams. Favor teams are the closest anyone gets to communing with gods. There's no direct interaction, no talking with them, only this exchange of energy. Our prayers in the form of cheers and action, their favor granting us more exciting games and temporary abilities beyond the norm. I've been scanning the Lawrence bleachers for the last 20 minutes, trying to pinpoint their favor squad in the crowd. The Eagle isn't coming out, I suppose? I say the name with all the sarcasm I can muster. No, Kando's still acting as ambassador. Fine. So Will won't come talk to me himself. It's been 2 years. I think he knows he's outmatched. Money can only get you so far in the favor game, at least with most deities. Oh, there he is, Boots says, sitting against the wall of the announcer's box, far right. I take the binoculars and scan the other side. There he is. Will Elkin, also known as the Eagle, a lanky kid with nicely trimmed hair, a thick pair of glasses, and a Carhartt jacket like the farm kids wear. He's led the Lawrence favor squad for 2 years. Last year, they pulled off a flash mob in the bleachers during halftime and made headlines across the state. We like to glare at each other across the stadium. His head turns. I know he sees me. I know he sees me because he points with 2 fingers at his own eyes, then at mine. I remove one hand from the binoculars to flip him the bird. He smiles. So do I, with teeth. Kando says he's a cool guy, Boots says, settling down next to me, rearranging their knits. You're talking to Kando now? Boots shrugs. He's not so bad, and he says Will has a brother on the Lawrence team. You two have more in common than you thought. Goody. Can I keep the binoculars for the game? Sure, they're pools. If she asks where you got them, you found them lying around. Got anything else hidden in all that knitting? Don't worry about it, Boots says. Boots is obviously not their real name. Mine's not Breezy, but these are the names we've called each other ever since we banded together to pursue this thing called winning. We've been the head of the Elmwood favor squad for 3 years since Nikki joined the football team. I decided I was going to do whatever I could to support her. I wasn't going to let anyone give her a hard time because she's a girl playing football in a small conservative town. She's pretty self-assured, we both are, but if I can back her up, I will. Boots and everyone else who assists in the crew gets something out of it, whether it's a chance to use their skills, a temporary thrill that the gods are favoring us, or the knowledge that they help the team. There's plenty to keep us busy. Planning after school to make sure we're all on the same page and we can get the word out to the network. Late night craft sessions to make posters, jerseys, and all the other paraphernalia we'll need for each scheme. Meetings with the coaches and athletic directors to get an idea of when we should push for favor. I'm good at leading a favor squad, but there are a lot of times I'd rather be good at the sport itself. Taller, leaner, less in my own head. I'd rather receive that favor. Soar across a field on a god's wings, stop my opponents with a god's strength. I'd rather look up at the bright lights from the turf and know that those in the crowded stands, there was someone watching me, cheering for me. But that's not going to happen. So ideal. So the story then goes on and kind of details how Breezy works through this problem of not being the one who's getting the glory, but providing it.
I can't believe there's a story out there that would make me want to go back to a high school football game. But apparently there is, and it's the story. And I mean, that's what I love about like any magical or fantasy novels to begin with, even though the stories are so out there and not our real world, they're also so relatable to your teenage years. And I can just like imagine myself in those stands. And it's like, I want to try to curry the favor of the gods.
Yeah. When I was writing, it was like, I didn't go to a football game when I was in high school because it was a big social party basically. And I was like, man, if it had been about like doing something for the team, I would have been there so fast.
So in a little bit, we'll take questions from the attendees. If any of you have questions, you can like pop them in the Q&A chat. I see that one is already there. So we'll talk amongst ourselves for like 10 minutes, and then we'll take any audience questions if we have them. So I wanted to ask all of the contributors, since this book is called Game On, and we all love different sorts of games, if you could talk about like one game that has made an impact on your life, whether that be like some big life-changing impact or just like a funny story of a game in your life. And let me know if you need a little extra time to think on it. I know sometimes those questions can put you on the spot. I can talk about one while everyone thinks. So, like everyone else, or like most people, I watched the Queen's Gambit. Was it even last year? I guess now it was 2 years ago. I watched the Queen's Gambit. And before watching that, I had never really played chess before. I like knew how the pieces moved, and that was it. Like I didn't know like any theory about like openings or anything like that. And after watching Queen's Gambit and it being like the dead middle of the pandemic and having nothing to do, I was like, yeah, I'm going to learn how to play chess. And I spent the next year learning how to play, and it became like the best pandemic hobby I could have asked for, because I realized as an adult, it's like very rare that I learn how to do a new thing. I mostly have just now like continued to do the skills I already have. And it was so like satisfying to learn a new game and a new skill and like work my mind in new ways. So I'm very thankful to chess for helping me get through the pandemic.
So when you asked this question, I was like, I felt like I have games in like the different game categories that each kind of built on each other or like built up different parts of my life. So like growing up, I played sports all the time. I hated it. I like playing sports, but I don't like playing sports competitively because I get too angry. And I don't like practice. I don't like people telling me to go run. But like volleyball and basketball were big. But then there's also board games and like card games and things like that. I played a lot of Egyptian Rat Screw, like through middle school and high school. I will still play that game. I am vicious. But I think really like the games that have had the most effect on me personally are video games. So like Pokemon, honestly, is huge. Like taught me how to think of, weirdly taught me how to think of stories in a different way, like different sources of conflict and different ways that you can set characters in a world. And then, oh gosh, like Bloodborne, the video game Bloodborne, which if you don't know about it, you don't know what it is just an amazing eldritch nightmare of a video game. And you kill things and there's blood everywhere, and it speaks to me and it makes me calm. And it really just, it opened up my mind also to like telling stories with like scene setting and little details that come up. In the chat, Alex Kuhn says, I can't beat the first boss in Bloodborne. Now, is that the cleric beast or is that Father Gascoigne? Because they can both be rather difficult. I still lose to Father Gascoigne all the time. But I do love it. It's challenging and it makes you, it really gives you that like drive to succeed. And it teaches you like, you know, if you fail, get back up and keep trying. You just get better at it.
Francesca, have you read Kayla's story in this anthology?
Yes, that was the first one I read. As soon as I saw the title, I was like, what is this about? Tell me.
So there's a story in this anthology that is, it's, I would say, like our other horror story in the anthology, and it is really cool. It's about like a horror video game from the perspective of the character in the video game that's being controlled by the person at home playing it on the computer, and it is so creepy and so interesting.
Yeah. And when I read that one and when I read Plum Girls, I was like, I could have written horror for this anthology. What?
Gloria, Kathleen, do you have a game you want to speak about?
So I'm not good at video games like in general, because like when I play Minecraft with my kids, they get really angry at me because I'm like, what if I just keep running over here? Like what happens? And they're like, no, you're supposed to be here and like building something. I'm like, but what if I just keep running? Like what will happen if I just keep running? And I like that part of like the creepy aspect of that, like what happens if you don't stay in the action but you go somewhere else. I do like playing Little Nightmares though. I think that's really like I like creepy things for the most part. And I guess for me, things growing up that were interesting, the games that we played were like slumber party games where you tried to like raise spirits or like, you know, light as a feather, like levitate people, or you go into what's supposed to be like a creepy house, an abandoned house filled with ghosts, like the house that everyone's afraid of on the street because no one's lived there for years. Like I like those sort of things, like what happens to people when they're faced with like fear and the unknown, like is this real or is it not? So I like those things.
So for me, 5 years ago, I tried curling for the first time. You know, the sport on the ice with the rocks. Here's my little ornament curling stone that's next to my desk when I write. And you sweep the ice to make the rock move. So I tried it for the first time. I loved it. And my husband and I started playing. And this year, he suggested we sign up for our first elite competition. And I was scared. I didn't feel like I was ready, but it had always been a dream of ours to do this. And he was like, what's the worst that can happen, right? We lose all our games, it doesn't matter. So I was like, okay. We signed up, we went, and somehow we ended up coming in second in the whole thing. We are now world ranked. And so, yeah, it's pretty awesome because I get to do it with him. The event that we like to do is doubles. It's a unique version of the game. So it's just him and me on the team. And yeah, we really love it. And it's been, you know, a great thing to have that we both, you know, get to do together in our free time.
Wow, that's
awesome.
That's amazing. We're like talking about our hobbies and Gloria's like, yeah, I'm on my way to the Olympics. Like it's fine.
Olympics doubles curling.
So I see we do have a few audience questions. We can maybe move on to those. And if we have leftover time, I have like some rapid fire questions I can ask people.
Absolutely. Let's hop to it. So first up in the queue, and take it away, whomever wants to jump in there first. Do you ever want to write a novel based on a short story you've published?
Yes, I have had that experience a few times. I would say the short story I wrote for Game On, it feels very like open and closed to me. Like I feel like I told the story I wanted to tell. I wrote another gaming story for my last anthology, Up All Night, in which I created like an app like Pokemon Go, but with mythical creatures instead of Pokemon. And I had so much fun with that I was like, oh, I could definitely write an entire book about this and like continue my character's story into college.
I think it would be really cool to expand like a short story into a novel, although like pretty frightening. I don't know if I could sustain any of these stories for novel length, but you know, you never know. Someday I might give it a try. Who knows?
I had one story. It's not a published one. I had one that I wrote a couple of years ago that was like about a prodigy pianist that I actually did expand into a full novel, but it's still not quite right. It's still not, the plot is weird. And so I'm still trying to figure out how to expand it. But yes, there's definitely been like, how do I do this? How do I make this work?
If there was a short story I've written that I would want to do this with, it would actually be the Game On one. It was a lot to pack in the puzzles into this, and I even had to simplify some of them to make room for everything else in the character development. And so I have thought about it because I think it'd be cool, but no concrete plans yet.
Well, Gloria, what if you just made like a Kane's Jawbone like companion to your Game On short story, and so people can play the mystery hunt themselves?
That would be really fun.
All right, next question here. Were these fresh ideas that you came up with for this anthology, or did you already have these stories brewing?
They were fresh stories for me. Like I really, like when Laura approached me, like for both of the anthologies that she's done, I was just really excited, and I wanted to write something different than I usually put in my novels. And so they were fresh ideas for me.
Same for me. Both of the anthologies that I've done with Laura have been fresh ideas, because it's always, she pitches the idea to me and then I'm like, let me think of something for that. Let me think of something that would work with that.
Yeah, same for me, fresh ideas. Although my husband pointed out something that's funny, which is I was in Fools in Love, which is an anthology that just came out that Laura's also in. But he pointed out that my stories for both could have actually been in the other one too, which I thought was kind of funny.
That is funny. I mean, I would say mine was fresh as well. So I come up with the ideas for these anthologies pretty far in advance, and then it's like quite the long process to get the different authors on board and sell the book. And then I like always end up procrastinating on writing my own story. Like I feel like I'm so busy organizing everything that it's like, oh no, I need to write something. And I kind of had this like real life inspiration at like the perfect time that I needed to write my story.
I actually have a question for you then, Laura, to follow up. Since you're the editor and you're the one saying, hello, fellow authors, come to me with the stories. Where does that come from for you, since like you begin the domino effect to solicit the stories from folks? So even before you've written your story that you procrastinate on, there's the seed planted of what you want to see.
You know, these anthologies have really been kind of like lightning bolt ideas for me. I feel like when people ask about my creative process of writing a novel, it's like writing a novel is like a grueling task where I'm really like chipping away piece by piece, like building out characters in the world and things like that. And I feel like the anthologies have been much more of that like romantic idea of just like an inspiration coming to you and being like, yes, that would be an amazing book. And so these ideas kind of just, I can't even really say where they come from. And once I have that lightning bolt idea, I go to my agent and I'm like, can we make this happen? What do you think? And then I spend my time trying to ask all of these talented writers if they can make room on their calendar and help me out and write a story.
Nice. That's so cool. Well, thank you for your lightning bolt moments, your magic. Dad Silverman asks, Laura, did you come up with the title for the book, or was it a collaboration with some of the other authors?
I feel like it's really a testament to the pandemic that my dad knows how to ask a question on Zoom. Like there's no way, there's no way he would have been able to do that 2 years ago. Not that he's like technologically stunted at all, but hi Dad. I came up with the title. It was part of the lightning bolt idea. The title was just in my mind right away. Sometimes publishers reject initial titles and sometimes they keep the initial title. And this time we kept the original one.
Gotcha. And then we have a question here from Emily. How do you push yourself to finish novels and short stories? Sounds like they're different beasts. No one wants to take it.
I can take it. So with novels, I feel like if you have an idea you're so excited about, that is kind of what drives you. If you can remind yourself what you were so excited about. It also sometimes might be a tough thing driving you, which is like, I have to get this book out before somebody else writes it. So like with Rent a Boyfriend, that's inspired by a real thing in Asian countries where women will hire fake boyfriends from companies to bring home to introduce to their parents. And it's a phenomenon that, a lot of people know about. And I was like, I want to write the fake dating book on this first, and so that really drove me. And I also was just excited about it. I had a blast. I created a whole company, with all these, how they train the boyfriends. And, so when you have something really fun that you're excited about, that kind of drives you. And I do have to say, after writing novels first and then moving to short stories feel so much easier. Like they're so manageable. You're like, oh, instead of 70,000 words, it's 7,000 or less, like even 4,000. Like it makes it a lot easier. So if you can go from one to the other, it's a little bit better, or you can view the short story as kind of a stepping stone to get you to the next one. But I do have to say, with every novel I've written, there has always been at least one, sometimes many moments of, oh my God, how am I going to finish this? Like what is coming next? Usually somewhere in the middle, right? There's that dreaded kind of middle phase. But, I think if you're a writer, that's normal. Don't let that get you down. Sometimes it's about figuring out, what that next thing is that will excite you. And once you get that, then usually it goes a lot easier.
Does everyone here usually know, like when you have an idea for a novel, do you know the ending like before you've even started? Because I feel like for me, sometimes I do, but then I hit the middle, and that's why I get to that strange middle stretch where things might start lagging a little because I haven't really thought it out while I'm drafting, but I know the ending, so I'm writing towards that and then hoping to sort of go back and fix the middle. And I wonder if that's common for all writers or not.
Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
It seems like I feel like I used to always know the end. And then lately, because I had a bit of a writing slump over the past couple of years because I've been in graduate school, but it was like, oh, I don't know how this is going to end. What am I doing? What am I doing with my life? And now it's coming back around where once I get through the beginning part, I can kind of see how the character's arc is starting. So then I know how it should end, and that helps inform how the plot should end. But actually, Gloria, what you said about it getting easier to write the short story, I was the exact opposite. Because I've only written novels, and then like the first time Laura asked me to write in an anthology, it was like, okay, 6,000 to 7,000 words, and I was like, great, it's going to be easy. And then I sat down to write it, and I was like, what is the plot of a short story? What is this? What am I doing? This doesn't make sense. I don't know how to do this. And it's basically like, it's one act of a book. It's a condensed one act story. So it tends to be like grueling for me to write a short story because it's like every word is a pulled tooth. And then when it's done, I read it over and I'm like, was that so hard? And yes, it was. Whereas like with novels, because I can get so immersed in the characters and the world, I kind of turn off how long it is and how many words I have to go till the end, and I just kind of let myself sit in the moment, whatever moment I happen to be writing. And if I don't like the book, or if I'm not really feeling it, then it starts getting grueling too.
My advice probably aligns with Gloria, which is you have to focus on something you're excited about. As I mentioned, writing a book can be very, very grueling. And it sounds so cheesy and cliche, but you just have to like write what you love, put tropes that you love into a book, rush through a scene that you hate to get to a scene that you're excited to write. Like you just have to focus on the good parts. But it is hard. It is really hard to get through and write that whole book. And you just have to keep pushing yourself with whatever motivation you can, with the thought of seeing the book on the shelf, with candy, which I keep next to me when I write, like every time. It's no easy task, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that too. Like if you haven't written a whole book before, sometimes it can feel really, really difficult to get to the end. It feels like you're never going to get there. And like if you just keep writing, you will eventually. It's just about putting down words every day.
And I think the great thing about that is too, at some point get to the end, because your draft is just that, it's a draft. You can go back and fix it, but just get to the end at some point, and then you can go back and start layering other things in and editing things, and you'll see what else needs to happen to the story, or what character doesn't belong there. And I think that's really, I love the first draft. I know everyone doesn't like their first drafts and says they're terrible, but for me, I feel like it's a real achievement, because I made the skeleton and now I can give it some blood and flesh and brain. And so I'm always like, yay, go me. Now I can watch TV. So
what a wonderfully creepy description. Give the book flesh.
Well, it's ready. It's got bone structure, so it's ready to get.
All right, I think this will be our last question to take us out. Laura, how did you arrange the order of the stories in the anthology, and did you ask the contributors for specific topics?
So as for the topics question, I give everyone the pitch for the anthology, and I basically tell people to write literally whatever you want. But I do have people send me their pitches in advance, so that I can make sure that we don't have overlap between stories. So every now and then I have to go back to someone and be like, do you mind adjusting the story? Do you mind going in another direction? Because we already have like 5 hate to love romances, or we can't have like 3 stories about Animal Crossing or something like that. So for the most part, the contributors have free reign, but we just want to make sure we're not like delivering the same stories like time and time again. And then ordering of the stories happens at the end. Once everything's written, I work with, so I'm the editor, but we also have an editor at Penguin, Kelsey Murphy, who I think is here tonight. And she is fantastic, wonderful, the nicest, the sweetest, the most intelligent. We love her. So Kelsey and I work together ordering the stories and game on. And it's the same kind of thing where you don't want to give people the same story too many times in a row. So we try to like layer the rom-coms with the scary stories, the like intense emotional stories with the more lighthearted stories. So you kind of have this like breezy, hopefully, reading experience.
What lovely insight as a reader of anthologies who's never necessarily thought about the order of things and then how that changes the reading experience. Thank you, editors of the world. And also, if your book is any indication, between the 4 of you and your readings, your stories were so different. And each of them compelling, that thinking of them like quilted together is really interesting to think about reading a book cover to cover with each of your stories in it. So I'm excited to read the other stories as well. And congratulations, everyone, on your new book.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And thank you everyone for attending tonight. I just put the buy link for Game On once again in the chat. There it is. Look at that pretty cover. Woo! Amazing. And thank you all for attending. As a thank you, we are offering you 10% off online code. So if you check out tonight, Greenlight Events 10 is your discount. And then each of our lovely authors, if you scroll through that chat, you'll see have a bounty of books on our website as well. So when you go to our page, you can search any of our authors. Not that very cute dog. Don't think they're an author. And you can buy some books. Thank you very much. And we will see you on the shelves next pub date, next anthology.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, y'all.
Bye.